So we're back with another explainer. And look, most of us, we think of the law as this neutral referee, right? Making sure everything's fair. But what if it's not? What if it's something else entirely? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty powerful theory that says law isn't about justice, it's about power. Yeah, it's a perspective that really makes you question the whole system and who it's really working for.
And to kick things off, check out this classic line from Thomas Hobbes. The theory we're digging into today, it basically takes this idea and just sprints with it. It suggests that law isn't some universal truth handed down from on high. Nope, it's an expression of power. Which, of course, leads to the big question, whose power are we talking about?
Well, this next quote from Linguit really narrows it down. It's basically saying, okay, if authority makes the law, then that authority is serving the interests of property. So you've got power and you've got property. I want you to hold on to those two words because they are literally the keys to unlocking this entire way of thinking. Okay, so if we're going to unmask the law, first, we need to get a good look at the mask, right? Let's start with the version we all know, the one we're all taught in school. The law as this beacon of justice, order, and authority.
You know the one. Society needs rules, otherwise it's just chaos. The law is that impartial referee, totally essential for any kind of civilization. It's this almost sacred idea of what law is, and it's exactly this idea that the theory we're exploring today is going to take a sledgehammer to.
All right, you ready? Time to pull back the curtain. This critical theory says that behind that shiny, noble facade of justice and order, there's a hidden engine chugging away, driving the whole system. And that engine, according to this view, isn't running on fairness. It's running on economics. And here it is, the core idea, laid out right there. From this perspective, law isn't neutral, not even close. It's a whole system of social relationships that's been designed, from the ground up, to serve the interests of the ruling class. And, what's more, to maintain their power, using the force of the state whenever it has to.
So how does this work? The theory uses a really powerful metaphor. Picture society as a building. The foundation, the base, is the economy. You know, how stuff gets made, who owns what. And then everything else, politics, culture, and yeah, especially the law, that's the superstructure that's built right on top of that economic base. And the main job of that superstructure? Well, according to this theory, it's to protect and reinforce the foundation it's sitting on. Now, this whole setup doesn't just pop up overnight. The theory, drawing on thinkers like Engels, points to this clear historical path. It starts with custom, just traditions and rules of thumb. Then those customs get written down, codified, and boom, you have law. Then you need someone to enforce it, so an authority, the state, emerges. And finally, you get this whole professional class of lawyers and judges, creating a legal science that looks so complicated and separate from everything else. And that's the trick, right? People start to forget, as the source material puts it, that their law actually comes from their economic lives.
Okay, so if the law is really just a tool for the ruling class, how does it keep everyone else on board? You might jump to thinking it's all about police, courts, prisons, brute force. But this theory argues that the most powerful tool isn't a baton. It's an idea. A really beautiful, really powerful, and, according to this theory, a totally deceptive idea. The illusion of equality.
I mean, you see this everywhere, right? It's written into constitutions all over the world. It's a bedrock principle of modern society. This promise that no matter who you are, everyone is equal in the eyes of the law. It's an incredibly powerful idea. And hey, who's going to argue with that?
Well, the theory does. It immediately throws a wrench in the works. It asks, okay, maybe two people are equal in the abstract, but what about in the real world? Is a landlord who owns 100 buildings really on equal footing with a tenant who needs a roof over their head when they sign a lease? Does the law actually treat them the same? The theory's answer is a hard no.
And the key to this whole illusion, the theory claims, is the concept of the legal person. In the eyes of the law, you're not you're an abstract person with certain rights. But here's a fascinating bit of trivia. The original Latin word persona actually meant mask. Like an actor wears in a play. And the theory argues that's exactly what this legal person is. It's a mask of formal equality that hides the very real class differences simmering just beneath the surface.
And to really hammer this point home, the theory looks back through history. It argues that rights aren't these timeless sacred things. They're just products of their economic era. I mean, think about it. In ancient Babylon, the law protected a master's right to physically harm a slave. In the Middle Ages, a feudal lord had legal rights over the people living on his land. And today, in our society, the theory would say the most sacred, untouchable right is the right to own private property. See the pattern? The specific rights change, but their core function, it claims, always stays the same. Protect the economic system of that time.
So this historical perspective leads to a really interesting question. If the law changes when the economy shifts from, say, feudalism to capitalism, what would happen if the economic base changed again? See, this theory isn't just about criticizing the past. It also tries to imagine what a future for law could look like.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the theory draws a sharp contrast between two completely different ideas about rights. It says that law under capitalism is all about negative freedom, basically the freedom from things, freedom from people interfering with you or your property, the right to be left alone. A socialist legal system, on the other hand, would be built on positive freedom, the freedom to actually do things. It would legally guarantee stuff like housing, healthcare, and education, the resources you actually need to live a full life.
And it doesn't even stop there. The theory predicts this whole thing would keep evolving. So an early socialist society might work on the principle of to each according to his work. You get back what you put in. But the theory goes, as society gets more and more productive, it could shift to an even higher principle, to each according to his needs. Distribution based not on what you do, but on what you need as a human being. So what happens to law in this final stage? Does it just vanish? Not exactly. It transforms. It stops being a tool for one class to rule another. It's no longer about coercion or ideology. Instead, in this view, it becomes something totally different. A set of scientific, non-coercive rules for organizing a really complex society. Think less like a judge's gavel and more like an engineer's blueprint for how to make everything run smoothly.
And that kind of brings us full circle. We've just done a really deep dive into one critical theory of law. And look, it's a challenging idea for sure. It's asking us to look past the shiny surface of justice and equality. The theory's ultimate claim is that law is basically a mirror reflecting the economic soul of a society. So if that's true, it leaves us with one heck of a question to chew on. What do our laws, right here and now, say about us?